Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Journey Latin America's virtual travel club on the wildlife of Latin America. I'm delighted to be sharing with you this evening some of the best wildlife watching spots in Latin America, and we'll also be telling you about our most memorable wildlife encounters. We've got a lot of ground to cover today, from Baja California right down to Antarctica. So I'm very grateful to be welcoming two extremely incredible, knowledgeable travel experts with us today. That's Evie Oswald from our sales team. Evie's just returned from the Galapagos Islands, and also David Nichols, our product manager. David is stepping in for Kathryn because she was unable to join us this evening, but hopefully you'll be meeting Kathryn soon at one of our upcoming virtual travel clubs. So for those of you who are familiar with the events of the virtual travel club, please do feel free to post your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom, and we'll aim to answer those questions by the end of the evening. We're anticipating this presentation to last around 40-45 minutes, so hopefully just wrapping up before 8 o'clock this evening. With so much to cover, let's get started. So for those of you who don't know Journey Latin America or are new to the Virtual Travel Club, I just wanted to let you know that we are the UK's #1 leading specialist in travel to the region. We've been offering tours from Mexico right down to the southern tip of Chile and Argentina for 42 years now. And we also can arrange expedition cruises to Antarctica, South Georgia and the Falklands, as it's one of the natural gateways to access that region. I've got some really exciting news to share with you this week. We've just found out that FIFO has awarded us the Platinum Trusted Service winners for the third consecutive year now in a row. So we're delighted with that news, and thank you very much to all our clients who have left us fantastic reviews and voted for us. We are truly grateful, and it's really down to our travel experts here, all who know the continent so well. Have either lived there, traveled the length and breadth of it, and they really are the ones who know everything inside out and like the back of their hand. So our main holiday types are tailor-made holidays, which literally means we can put together anything. We only cover Latin America, so whether you're looking to a wildlife holiday or you want to go off on an active adventure or combine the two, we can literally, you tell us what you would like and we will create your perfect holiday for you. Our group tours, there's over 33 group tours in our latest group tours brochure. The average group size is around 12, depending on the group size, they can go up to 16 or 20. You're accompanied by an award-winning tour leader throughout, and they really know your stuff. So really do take a look at our website later or request a brochure, because there are some fantastic holidays that either take you off the beaten track or take in the classic highlights. So now, without further ado, I'd like to pass you over to Evie, who's going to tell you a little bit about our animal welfare policy.
Hi everybody, my name is Evie, and like Laura said, I'm going to talk a little bit about our animal welfare policy. So we really have our animal welfare policy in place to ensure that the sort of excursions and experiences that we offer you are really sustainable and always have the animals' sort of interests at heart. As I'm sure you know, Latin America is a super biodiverse sort of region, right from Central America to South America. There's so many different wildlife experiences that you can have. And our aim really is to make sure that you have a really interesting, fun and memorable experience, while also ensuring that the impact that we have on the animals and their sort of habitats and how they live and survive is absolutely minimal. So we do work with a lot of sort of local communities, and via our suppliers we support those local communities in a number of ways to really also take on board our policies and our practices with regards to the animal welfare policy, so that the experiences that you have out there really are in favour of the animals and how they live. So this is just sort of a very brief overview of how our animal welfare sort of works, but we do have a lot more information on our website about it. You can read about it there, and you can always get in touch if you've got any questions about it as well.
Thank you, Evie. So over to Baja California. Baja California is this right up in the northern part of Mexico. It's this thin, knobbly peninsula that juts out straight from California and is separated by mainland Mexico and the Sea of Cortez. It's one of the places I first visited when I joined Journey Latin America, and the reason for my trip there was predominantly to do a kayaking expedition trip circumnavigating the island of Espiritu Santo. But my trip also coincided with the whale watching season. And I'd never seen whales before in my life, and I'd never been up close to whales. So it was, I thought this is an opportunity I can't miss. And there are a number of day trips you can do, or you can join a cruise that focuses specifically on the wildlife of the region. But I did this as a day trip, and I traveled from a part in southern Baja California, which is predominantly really, it's a very arid peninsula, so it's very desert-like, it's very barren, but it does have some very beautiful beaches, and it has a beautiful coastline and some great hotels. But if you're there during the whale watching season, for me, that is the main reason really to head there, because the experience really is a second to none. So these are the grey whales, but you'll also find the blue whale, which is the largest mammoth on the planet. They're up to 30 meters long. They're generally harder to spot, and you'll find them located mainly around the lagoons of San Ignacio, which is closer to Loreto. This is further north, but this is the Bay of Magdalena, which is a hidden lagoon off the Pacific coast. And what happens is, from around January time, these whales, they migrate each year from Alaska, and the female whale comes here to carve and nurture her calf until the whales are strong enough to make the journey back up to Alaska, and they spend roughly 2 months building up their strength to make the journey back. And they're incredibly curious whales, unlike the blue whales, which is very hard to spot. These whales, as you can see, you're in a very simple boat. You can spend literally hours, and it just feels like it goes by in seconds. The lagoon is full of whales. They're not difficult to spot. This is not an unusual experience to have, and it's really, really quite magical. And so, yeah, if you can time your visit to Mexico with the whale watching season, you'll be hugely rewarded. But apart from seeing whales, which is obviously number one there, you can also go snorkeling and swim with sea lions, and do other activities like I did, such as the sea kayaking. So all in all, a fantastic place to visit. Over to you, Evie.
Hi, everybody again. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Costa Rica now, which I've also visited recently. This is a really wonderful place for wildlife. You've got such sort of a diverse region. You've got rainforest, cloud forest, more sort of arid volcanic areas. You've got beautiful coastline. There's so much you can see and do in Costa Rica. I think for me, I went to a place called the Osa Peninsula, which is quite a sort of remote part of the country. It's right in the south, and it's home to the Corcovado National Park, which is a massive national park that's really well preserved and looked after. So the chances of spotting wildlife there are quite high. You have to fly there to get to the Osa Peninsula. Usually it's a short flight, only about half an hour, but it's definitely worth it, I think, because it's quite remote and it's a little bit more difficult to get to. Not as many people go there, and like I said, the wildlife experience is really great. The lodge that I was staying at there had a beautiful sort of viewing platform where you could just look out and see this wonderful rainforest with there was a pair of macaws that were flying around the lodge, constantly flying around, and it was a beautiful sort of scene. And you could hear howler monkeys. I don't know if many of you have seen or heard howler monkeys before, but they're very, very noisy, and they make all this sort of howling noise, as the name suggests. And you got these birds flying around. It was just wonderful, and at the same time would go on sort of nature walks, spotting wildlife, and see sort of packs of groups of different types of monkeys, capuchin monkeys and spider monkeys in the trees, which for me was really, really good fun. Obviously there are sloths as well, which is one of the sort of famous, I think, species that people think about when they hear the word Costa Rica. They're quite difficult to spot, but this is a picture of one of my colleagues, and she managed to get a really good picture. Also, you've got the turtles. There's a few different spots where you can see turtles. There's one place called Tortuguero and another place called Ostinal, which are probably the two most famous places where you can see them nesting at different times of the year. And here's some of the toucan, for example. That was one of the birds that I saw quite a lot when I was there. And the other thing that I really found quite fun about Costa Rica was the night tours that we did. So in a different lodge I was staying at called Pacuari, we did quite a lot of night walks where you go with a guide, obviously. They've got all the gear that you need and all the knowledge, which is the main thing, and they know exactly what to look for. Listening out for certain noises, being able to spot snakes, and on the left here you can see a paw print from a wild cat, and I remember the guide saying to us how there were most likely a number of wild cats around us at the time, but they're too nervous and too scared to come out at all, but they can definitely see you, but you can't see them. And I found that quite kind of funny. And yeah, this is one of the paw prints that I took a photograph of. And obviously there are lots of other things you come across at night, like the spiders and the lizards and giant toads and things like that. Not for everybody, but it is quite fun. I think children as well find these types of activities really good fun. So it's always great family destination, Costa Rica. So yeah, that was a really great experience that I had in Costa Rica, but I'm now going to move on to talk about the Galapagos Islands, which I visited really recently. I was there just last month. I had a wonderful cruise that I went on to the Galapagos Islands. So they're located in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Ecuador. It's about an hour and a half flight from mainland Ecuador to the Galapagos Islands, and from there I boarded a cruise. You can also do land-based trips, but I boarded a cruise, and we sort of went around mainly the western islands in my case. The Galapagos Islands for me was an absolutely fantastic experience, especially in terms of wildlife. One of the things that really sort of struck me was how pristine and virgin the islands really were, despite the fact that so many people have visited the islands and continue to visit the islands. The government organizes the cruises in such a way in order to protect the wildlife and the flora and the fauna and everything, so that there's only very few people at any island at any one time, which you can really notice, because there were so many times when I was by myself, well, not by myself, but essentially the cruise, just the people on the cruise were at that particular island at that time. You don't see groups of people and loads of other cruise ships all getting off at the same point. It's not like that at all. So the experience was really, really special. The wildlife also is pretty fearless, which is quite interesting. It's not like somewhere like the Amazon, where you might find certain species are hiding away in the bushes and all the foliage and the trees and things like that. It was very easy to spot the wildlife in the Galapagos. They don't sort of run away from you, or they don't have very many natural predators, and so they're quite sort of easygoing, and so you can get some wonderful pictures. So there's a few here, obviously, of the land iguanas and the marine iguanas, the famous Galapagos tortoises as well. Here's the albatross, and the frigate bird on the left, and the Galapagos penguin, which I saw all of these when I was there, and the blue-footed and red-footed boobies, which were also everywhere. They were fantastic to see. And one of the other fantastic things about the Galapagos Islands, without a doubt, is the snorkeling. So there was one spot in particular called Punta Vicente Roca, which is on Isabella Island, which was just amazing. It was the first time I'd ever really properly done snorkeling before, and I think I can't imagine it getting any better than that. It was there was a number of sea turtles, big sea turtles swimming in the sea where I was snorkeling. I think there were probably about 8 or 10 at one point. We had sea lions swimming amongst us. There was at one point a Galapagos penguin swimming along, and a marine iguana, all in the same kind of pot. Basically, it was amazing. I'd never experienced anything like it. And I also spotted the ray that you can see in the top left-hand corner. So that was another, really quite amazing experience. And here's some pictures of the Galapagos tortoises, and typical Galapagos traffic jam. These are some of my own pictures as well of the sea lions that we saw. I went there during the season where there were quite a lot of babies, sort of pups. So they're quite playful, which is nice. A land iguana that got very close to me, which was quite exciting, and some more tortoises. And this is a marine iguana. So overall, a really, really good, really fantastic experience in the Galapagos, and I'd recommend it to anybody who wants to see wildlife in Latin America. So now I think Laura's going to talk about the Pantanal.
Thanks, Evie. You lucky thing going to Galapagos a month ago. It looks absolutely amazing. The Pantanal may be a place which not many people have heard of. Often people come to us asking to go to the Amazon to spot wildlife. And whilst, yes, the Amazon is home to a huge amount of wildlife, because the vegetation is so dense and lush, actually it makes spotting wildlife quite tricky. However, the Pantanal, which is a huge wetlands area located mainly in Brazil, in the southwest, in the state of Mato Grosso, which literally translates as the dense vegetation, is home to a huge amount of wildlife. It's roughly about the size of France. You can fly into two different parts of the Pantanal, the north or the south. So the northern part of the Pantanal is known as Campo Grande, and the south, Cuiabá, and the south is Campo Grande. But either part of the Pantanal that you fly to, you're going to have the most mesmerizing wildlife experience. The picture you can see here of the sunset, and the sunsets in this part of the world are absolutely stunning, not least because it's a wetlands area, so you get these wonderful mirror images from the trees, and also it's one place where you can also see the giant Victoria Regia water lilies that are often associated with the Brazilian Amazon. But you have these lovely, incredible, the picture here on the left is of a jacana, which you can see walking along a lily pad, but also you have plenty of jabiru storks, which are that's my first memory of arriving into the Pantanal, getting into the lodge after about a 4-hour drive, which is more or less roughly the sort of standard amount of time you can expect to transfer from the airport to your lodge. Is meeting this little bird here, this little fellow, which is not really actually that little. These jabiru storks are the largest bird that you will encounter in the Pantanal. They stand at almost 5 foot. So you can imagine one of those sort of plodding along next to you quite happily. It's quite a sight to behold. But apart from the birds, you're going to encounter caiman, a lot of mammals. Capybaras are probably one of the most famous and so synonymous with this region. So the capybara is the image in the bottom left-hand corner. They look similar to a giant guinea pig. They're probably about the size of a medium-sized dog. They have webbed feet, which makes them really, really fast and good swimmers, so they can get away quickly from their prey. But you see them in big herds, and they're very peaceful looking, very shy, but they're everywhere, and you can get really up close to them, and they're quite happy to wander around you. The armadillos, anteaters as well, these are all real probable experiences that you will have. Here's a picture of the jabiru stork on the left-hand side again with its gigantic legs. And another area that's famous, another species of animal that's famous for this area is the hyacinth macaw. They're very majestic, very beautiful blue macaws with this bright yellow around their beaks and around their eyes. So again, they're not that difficult to come by, and that's why the Pantanal is such a magnificent experience, because although we do recommend you take binoculars, it's so easy to spot the wildlife. It feels like the Pantanal for me is like going on a wildlife safari. Almost would be similar to an experience in Africa. It's really incredible. And okay, I'd go for a minimum of 3 or 4 nights, but if you can spend longer, you'll be hugely rewarded. One of my most memorable experiences when I traveled to the Pantanal was actually when I led a group tour, and we went to the northern part of the Pantanal. We stayed in a lodge called the Rio Mutum, and we left really, really early. Like anywhere to see wildlife, you have to get up at the crack of dawn or go out quite late in the evening, because that's when you see the wildlife at their most awake. And we came across, we were in a dugout canoe, and it was maybe about 4:30 in the morning. Everybody was really tired. And suddenly this family of giant river otters appeared out of nowhere and started swimming around our canoe and just making these loads of noises, and was quite frolicking in the water. And it was just one of those, of all the experiences I had in the Pantanal, for me, that's the one that stands out the most. It was very, very special indeed. But of course, a big draw to the Pantanal, and what we hear a lot about, are the jaguars. And you can see jaguars, although they're quite difficult to spot, they're very elusive in many parts of Central and South America. But we find, and so the reports that tell us, that the Pantanal is the best place, you have your best chance of spotting the jaguar. Evie started the presentation talking about our wildlife welfare policy, and so we felt we really had to give a mention to this non-for-profit initiative that's based in the Pantanal. This is the On Safari project. They set up the project, it must be coming up to almost 10 years ago now, and they're very associated closely to the Cayman Lodge. And what they do is an incredible work. It's a pioneering initiative, the first of this type to happen in South America, but they're rewilding jaguars. Jaguars that have been injured or orphaned from a very young age. What they do is they help them get back eventually into the wild. And so if you stay at a lodge such as Cayman, you're able to visit this project, and you're able to understand that the work they do. And also by visiting the project, you're helping to fund the charity that's helping these jaguars get back into the wild. As a result of this work that they've been doing, as I said, it's up less than 10 years, there are now something like between 30 and 50 jaguars that they've counted that are living close to the Cayman Lodge. So it's really, really fantastic work that they're doing, and we applaud them. Another project that you can also see in this area is at the Cayman Lodge is the hyacinth macaw project. Sadly, these are endangered species, so the scientists there have got a laboratory, and they're working to understand the biology and looking at how these magnificent birds interact with other bird species to help ensure a better survival rate for them and to help them thrive. So yeah, the Pantanal is one top location to go. But having said that, from one wetlands area to another wetlands area, the Janos in Colombia, and again, this is a really new wildlife region for us to be talking about. I was extremely lucky to visit Colombia about 3 years ago now, and it was specifically to go and research this area of Colombia, the Janos, this wetlands area. It's located in the east of Colombia. It's again a massive wetlands area that borders almost with Venezuela. It meets the Orinoco Delta. This is Colombia's wild, wild west. This is cowboy terrain. This is not a place for tourists to go. This is really off the beaten track. You may come across mainly Colombian tourists, but very, very few people. This type of adventure is for somebody who really wants to feel that they're pioneering a new place. It's tough travel. It's long road journeys along bumpy dirt tracks. But the experience you get when you get to your lodge, which is probably going to be what they call an hato. An hato is the Colombian word for ranch. And these ranches, again, you think you're staying on a farm, but the land that they own is it's like the size of a small country in Europe. But because there are no tourists there, because the wildlife is not threatened by humans, again, you just have these extraordinary wildlife encounters, just like how Evie was describing in the Galapagos. And again, very similar wildlife to the Pantanal: capybaras, jabiru storks, giant anteaters. And I remember, giant anteaters are difficult. I've been to lots and lots of fantastic wildlife locations, I'm very lucky to say, in South America. But the Janos, I got so close, just a little baby anteater coming, wandering past, looking at me. When you have those sort of experiences that you just can't time, those are the moments that they make a trip one of the most memorable. You can stay in the most beautiful hotel, you can see one of the most iconic sites, but when you have an encounter with something that's unexpected, it really is phenomenal. And I have to mention the anaconda, because anacondas really are difficult to come by. And our guide at the time said, come on, there's an anaconda nearby, you can come and have a look at him. And I thought, this isn't, it's not going to happen. But actually this anaconda had digested a small goat about a week before our arrival. So they knew that it was going to take the anaconda a long time to move and digest the goat, sadly for the goat. But I got to get actually really close to the anaconda, and that was really very exciting. But at the same time, trying to keep my distance. Beautiful spoonbill birds. For birders, this is just a paradise. The red scarlet ibis again is something extraordinary that you'll see. It's quite typical for you to go on a sunset safari tour in the back of an open jeep. And then just as the sun's starting to go down, you have these huge flocks. So suddenly the sky turns red with these beautiful scarlet ibis that land on the trees, and the sound that they make is just wonderful. So that's from the Janos to Argentina, to the Liberat wetlands, another fantastic area for wildlife. And I'll hand you over to David, who's going to tell you all about it.
Hi, good evening, everybody. So from another wetland to another wetland. So we're now in the very far north east of Argentina, the Esteros de Liberat, or the Liberat wetlands as they're known. They are now a national park, actually one of Argentina's newest national parks since December 2018. And this is actually one of my favorite parts of Argentina. I've traveled all over the country, and it's a very different Argentina to what you typically might see on a 2-week, 3-week holiday there. We mostly tend to go to Patagonia, maybe some wine country. These are subtropical wetlands in close to the border with Paraguay. Very atmospheric, very beautiful, and very, very untouched, really. There aren't even any paved roads that lead here. They're about the size of Switzerland, so they're a bit smaller than the Pantanal, but with a great diversity of bird life, about 360 species of birds. You're outside of the tropics here, and over the previous decades, there has been quite a lot of farming, which has had an impact on the wildlife. But due to a recent rewilding project, thanks to the Conservation Land Trust, native species are starting to make a comeback now. But in any case, what you should see on a typical visit are alligator, tons and tons of capybara, that's the world's largest rodent. You've already been introduced to those on the top right-hand side. Marsh deer, you'll see howler monkeys too. You might see an anaconda. The rewilding project has already introduced giant anteater back into the wild. And also, they now have a sort of self-sustaining, viable population in one part of the marshes. They're also reintroducing peccary, green-winged macaw, tapir, and even jaguar. So you're not going to see a jaguar out and about in the wetlands yet. They haven't yet reached the point where they've released them back into the wild. But the progress that's been made over the last 15 years has been really, really impressive, thanks to the Conservation Wildlife Trust and Wildlife Argentina, Rewilding Argentina, which was set up by the Tompkins, Douglas and Chris Tompkins. So how do you get here? Well, that's part of the fun, depending on which way you look at it. It's not easy to get to. You're within a day's drive of perhaps the most visited highlight of Argentina, which is the Iguazu Falls, but that's quite a long drive. Most of the road is unpaved, so you tend just to get the real wildlife enthusiasts coming here. What you're rewarded with is a gloriously undeveloped landscape. Few people live here. There are very few places to stay, but they are cozy wildlife lodges, a couple of good estancias where you're very well looked after, taken out on wildlife spotting excursions by boat each day. The sunsets are incredible. If you stay on one estancia called Rincon del Socorro, you've got rhea wandering around as you go for your walk in the early evening or first thing in the morning. Rhea look like ostriches. They're not ostriches, but they look similar to those. Many capybaras out and about as well, and lots of birds. One of the easiest ways to get here is actually on the overnight bus from Buenos Aires. It sounds like a bit of an ordeal, but it isn't. It is quite comfortable and takes about 9 hours and takes you to Mercedes, which is just on the edge of the wetland. So that's actually a good way to reach them. But I would strongly encourage a visit if you're in Argentina and you're looking for a wildlife experience. You'll be one of the few people that goes there. Peninsula Valdez, also in Argentina on the Patagonian coast. This is a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve, well-known area for wildlife. One of the great activities here is whale watching. You've got enormous quantities of southern right whales congregating in the Golfo Nuevo, which is just off the Peninsula Valdez. Also, you'll find here sea lions, large populations of elephant seals, lots of birds of prey, and also tens of thousands of penguins. So the time to come here, well, for the very best time is October and November. That's when you'll see absolutely everything, including whales. But you can visit anytime really between September and April and see something. I would probably avoid the second half of April and May. There's not a lot to see in those months, and it's the onset of winter. But the whale watching season begins in June. The earlier that you visit in the whale watching season, the more rewarding the encounters. And I'll never forget standing on beaches here and seeing whales leaping out of the ocean just a few meters away. Also standing on cliff tops. You can see them very, very easily during the whale watching season, which goes on from the middle of June right through to the middle of December. The penguin colonies are immense, especially Punta Tombo, which is just south of the Valdez Peninsula. You have about 300,000 penguins there. One of the things I really enjoyed about traveling here was this is authentic Patagonia. So I know that we like to see mountains, glaciers, beautiful forests when we go to Patagonia. Most of Patagonia is just endless steppe as far as you can see with big skies. And this is what the Valdez Peninsula is too, with people are few and far between on remote estancias and homesteads, and you really do feel like you have stepped back in time. Another interesting angle to visiting here is that the main town in the area where you stay, Puerto Madryn, was the first point of entry for the Welsh settlers when they first arrived in 1865. So some of the towns and villages here have got buildings that survive from that time. You can have Welsh tea if you like, and they still have a nice Stedford in this region also. So well worth a visit for a number of reasons. Onwards to Antarctica. Well, I don't think anyone comes back from Antarctica quite the same as before they left. It is an immensely rewarding experience. It takes some getting to, it doesn't come cheap, but it's just one of those, it really is a truly once in a lifetime experience. You might wonder why we're talking about Antarctica at Journey Latin America, and that's because the main point of entry for tourism to Antarctica is through South America. So most people visit by ship, and those ships leave the southern point of Argentina, the port of Ushuaia. You can also reach Antarctica by air from southern Chile. So if you don't quite have the stomach for the Drake Passage, which is the 2-day-long crossing between Patagonia and the Antarctic Peninsula, you can fly just to those islands you can see off the tip of the peninsula of Antarctica, King George Island, in about 2 hours, and board a ship there. The Drake Passage, as I said, takes 2 days, and your average time in Antarctica will be 5 to 6 days. So all in all, you'll need about 10 days from South America back to South America. But some cruises can take as long as a month, depending on how much you want to see. You'll spend all your time on board. There's nowhere to stay on the mainland of Antarctica itself. The good news is that all of the wildlife, or the vast majority of the wildlife, is on the coast or in the ocean, and is on the Antarctic Peninsula, which is the part of Antarctica which is closest to South America. So hundreds and thousands of penguins everywhere. You'll see them every day. Several different types of seals, many seabirds as well, and of course whales. The best time to see whales, if that's your particular interest is to come later in the season, so February to March. The Antarctic season begins in late October, early November, and goes through right to the end of March. So temperatures reach sort of dizzy high of 0 in the Antarctic summer, but you won't feel too cold because you'll be well wrapped up in layers. If you get a sunny day in Antarctica in the middle of winter, it can actually feel very, very pleasant. It just depends on how windy it is. So come at the beginning of the season, October, November, if you want to see the courtship rituals of the penguins and the seals. Come in late December and January to see the penguins, the chicks. That's probably the most popular time to come. Come in February, March to see the whales, but you won't be disappointed. It's an amazing experience. South Georgia is visited as part of a longer Antarctic cruise. So you'll need 3 weeks if you want a cruise, which includes South Georgia on I'd say on average. There are some shorter ones as well. You'll generally do your time in the peninsula, and then the ship will continue to South Georgia and then to the Falkland Islands. This is one of the remotest islands in the world. I've never been to South Georgia, but colleagues and friends of mine who have been have said it is the greatest wildlife show on earth. In fact, some parts of South Georgia have the greatest concentration of wildlife on the planet. We're talking an island about the size of Majorca, with a population of about 7 million penguins, and there are hundreds of thousands of seals as well, huge colonies of albatross, and of course the history of the early explorers that reached here. It's also incredibly beautiful. It's 900 miles from the nearest airport, which is Port Stanley, so you can only reach South Georgia by ship. The overriding highlight of and visit South Georgia is the immense king penguin colonies at St Andrews Bay and also Golden Bay, where you get hundreds of thousands of king penguins and their chicks, interspersed with seabirds and elephant seals and other types of seals as well. So it is an incredible experience by all accounts. Onwards to the Falkland Islands, a little outpost, a British outpost in the South Atlantic, about 300 miles to the east of Patagonia. You'll get the red post boxes here. Port Stanley has a population of about 2,500. It's got 5 pubs, so you'll get a bit of British nostalgia by visiting the islands, but it's also great for wildlife. The Falklands is actually one of the best places to visit if you're interested in penguins. So if you don't quite have the sea legs for visiting the Antarctic Peninsula on a cruise and you prefer to be land-based, you can fly into the Falklands on the once weekly flight from Chile. It goes from Santiago and from Punta Arenas, so it combines very well with Patagonia. And you can spend a week on the islands visiting farms and lodges on the outer islands. So several of the outer islands like Bleaker, Sea Lion Island and Pebble Islands have got good quality lodges. They're quite simple, but they are surrounded by wildlife. You're free to wander wherever you want amongst the wildlife, keeping a respectful distance, of course. And you've got full immersion by having a sort of land-based experience. So quite a different experience to being based on a ship. So well worth a visit, simply because you need to spend a week there. There's also a flight from Sao Paulo in Brazil that is operated by LATAM. The flight that goes from Chile also calls once a month at Rio Gallegos in Argentina. It's a paradise for birds as well. There are about 230 species of birds on the island. So an excellent destination all round.
Amazing, David. That's incredible. I just, Antarctica definitely looks like a bucket list destination to visit, and I'm truly inspired. Whilst we wait for anybody to put in any questions in the Q&A box, I wanted to ask both Evie and David what their most memorable wildlife experience was in Latin America. Do you have any funny anecdotes of, I don't know, anteaters wandering into your room or something? David?
Well, I mean,
putting you on the spot now, aren't I?
I mean, I've been to many of the great wildlife areas of Latin America, had some amazing experiences, but one standout experience is actually of going to Brazil, to the Pantanal, and looking for jaguars, because jaguar spotting has become a key motive for many people to visit the Pantanal now, and over the last 15-20 years their populations have gone up quite significantly. So I went out there about 10 years ago, and to an area of the Pantanal where jaguar sightings were highly likely, and I think I was the only person who visited that week who didn't see one, and what it brought home to me was wildlife is not something that you can ever guarantee. You need to be in the right time, in the right place at the right time with the right guide. There was a chap staying at my lodge who came back literally half an hour after I did, and he saw 5 of them. And it's become a bit of a standing joke in the office that I was the only person that went to that place and didn't see a jaguar. But it's a great excuse to go back. And I've been very lucky with sightings of wildlife generally in Latin America. It's a fantastic destination for the wildlife enthusiasts.
Brilliant, brilliant, love it. How about you, Evie? Most memorable wildlife experience?
So for me, I think quite recently when I was in the Galapagos, and we went to Dragon Hill, which is on Santa Cruz Island, and we're doing a walk around there looking for the land iguanas. And a similar situation to you, David, actually, we almost didn't see any. And I was starting to get a bit disappointed, and then towards the end we got a really fantastic glimpse of one. I mean, the guide said to us that they can't hear very well or see very well, but they can sense movement. So he said, be really, really, really still. And so the group that we were with, we were super, super still. And this iguana came right out of the bushes and walked right past me. I mean, just within a few centimeters of me. It was really amazing. And then so I got some fantastic pictures, and it was just amazing to have this creature right next to me. And then it just walked off and went into the next bush. And then just a few moments later, we saw a baby land iguana, which he said was extremely unusual to see. And so that for me was pretty spectacular, especially as I was getting to the point where I thought we weren't going to be able to spot any. So that was really great.
What a wonderful thing to happen. Brilliant. Sounds great.
How about you, Laura?
I thought you might turn the question on me. Do you know what? It's actually a really difficult one because there's been so many. And so to pinpoint one that I haven't mentioned already, but it's really tough. But actually, when Evie was talking about the night walks in Costa Rica, I think that for me, definitely night walk in Costa Rica. And also when I went to Puerto Maldonado, the southern Amazon in Peru, doing a night walk when you're literally in the pitch black, and of course the jungle is a very different place at night. During the day it's very peaceful, and at night it comes alive, so your sensations are just absolutely heightened. So when you're walking through the jungle, it's pitch black, you can't see anything, but you can hear lots of things. I think for me, that experience of knowing you might be just inches away from a tarantula or a howler monkey or a sloth, I think that that was really, really exciting.
Great. And I think if I could just add, I mean, we haven't really touched on the Amazon that much in this presentation because it's an enormous area. And as Laura said, it's with the tree cover, it can be quite difficult sometimes to spot wildlife. It is there, it's just quite hard to spot. But I've also had some amazing experiences traveling in the Amazon from a wildlife perspective. And one particular standout memory is being at the Mamimarua Sustainable Development Reserve, which is in the remote Amazon of sort of western Brazil near Tefé. It's a community-run lodge called Wakari Lodge, where they took me to see pink dolphins at sunset, and there were literally dozens of them all around the canoe, and we just sat back and enjoyed the spectacle until sun went down, and then we went back to the lodge, and it was just absolutely really, really beautiful experience. I'll never forget it.
Wow.
Oh, that sounds incredible. Well, We've come to the end of our virtual travel club, and I just want to thank everybody at home for joining us this evening. We hope you've enjoyed the talk and you feel inspired to travel to Latin America on a wildlife adventure. Please do get in touch if any questions do come to mind. Please, you just go to our website or give us a call. We're always happy to chat to you. And we look forward to you joining us for the next virtual travel club on the 27th of I should know this, February, which is on family. So it's going to be 22nd, not the 27th, 22nd of February. So we look forward to you joining us then. Have a lovely evening. Thank you very much for joining us again. And we hope you've enjoyed the talk.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, everyone. Have a good evening.